I call this committee meeting of the Rules Committee to order, and I will ask our clerk to take roll, please.
Chair Long.
Present.
Long present. Vice Chair Hollins.
Present.
Hollins present. Leader Damath.
Present.
Damath present. Representative Engen.
Present.
Engen present. Representative Howard. Representative Hewitt. Representative Jordan.
Jordan present.
Jordan present. Representative Lilly.
Duly present.
Lilly present. Representative Moeller.
Moeller present.
Moeller present. Representative Nash.
Nash present.
Nash present. Representative Pulowski.
Pulowski present.
Pulowski present. Representative Rarick. Representative Robbins.
Present.
Robbins present. Representative Torkelson.
Torkelson present.
Torkelson present. Representative Wolgamott.
Wolgamott present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, members, for joining us remotely for this hearing. We have 3 items of business that we needed to attend to. And the first is that we have the LCC legislative plan for employee benefits for 24 and 25 that we need to approve. So I will turn it over to Kelly Knight to describe the plan.
Mr. Chair and members, you have before you a stricken and underlined version of the changes. And the changes are not overly substantive, but it clarifies the process for employees who may need to request an accommodation under the ADA. We've also updated a number of our locations now that everyone is at the COB. We've updated several of the links, as well as including a link to the sergeant's security information for staff. We've also included statutory language that is related to pregnancy accommodation and made updates to the caretaker pregnancy and medical leave. And then we've also updated the federal rate for motorcycle and personal aircraft.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. I move the adoption of the updated 2024-2025 LCC legislative plan for employee benefits. Any discussion to the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Chair.
Oh, apologies. We'll come back to the vote. I didn't see your hand, Representative Robbins. Representative Robbins for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I was struggling to find where to raise the hand. It's been a while. And I will lower it now that I know what I'm doing. So I just had a quick question on the changes on page 4 on the Americans with Disability Act. Maybe Ms. Knight, you could just summarize for me. It seems like we're including the entirety of the Human Rights Act in it, rather than sections. I'm not sure if you could just articulate for me what the differences are between how we used to do it and what this will mean.
Mr. Chair, Representative Robbins, this is what our practice has been. And as you'll notice in here, it is referring to the applicable provisions of the ADA as amended and in the Minnesota Human Rights Act. So it's those areas that address the ADA within the Minnesota Human Rights Act.
Representative Robbins.
So if you could just point out more specifically what will be different now?
Aye.
Mr. Chair and Representative Robbins, I don't think that I've updated this with House Counsel, and nothing is a change. We are just putting the language that we previously used into the LCC book.
And Robbins.
Thank you. I had a couple other quick questions. Let me just flip to them. So on the sick leave provisions, is this in addition to the earned sick and safe leave that was passed? So there's up to 240 hours of sick leave, and that's in the earned sick and safe leave law we passed is additional?
Mr. Chair and Representative Robbins, first of all, the LCC has statutory authority to approve any changes to the sick leave for the legislature. But the earned sick and safe time kind of sets the floor for what is to be earned. And the House policy actually exceeds that.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. One more question, Mr. Chair.
Go for it.
Thank you. On page 34, there's new language about caretaker pregnancy and medical leave. And it seems to say that for reasons of serious health conditions for yourself, a family member, or prenatal care, there's no longer a requirement for documentation if it
Recommended.
Representative Robbins.
no further questions. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands, but I will pause to see if there are any additional questions. Okay, then I will renew my motion for the adoption of the updated 2024-2025 LCC legislative plan for employee benefits. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails. I will also note for the record that we've been joined by Representatives Howard and Representative Hewitt, who were just past the roll call. So thank you for joining us. The next item is the resolution on House Operations 2024 R28A2. And I will recognize Matt Gehring, Director of House Research, to describe the resolution.
Sure, Mr. Chair. So first, before I walk through the content of the resolution, I'll just say a little bit about the problem that this resolution is trying to solve. And I know that for someone who's maybe seeing this for the first time, they might kind of be seeing the resolution in the context of the election results and kind of draw conclusions that might not actually be here. So the problem that this resolution is solving has to do with a gap that's going to exist starting in 2025 between the end of the current members' terms and when the new legislature is seated on and convenes on January 14th. And so that's the reason why this gap exists, is that the state constitution provides that member terms for those members who are elected at the 2022 state general election, their terms will expire on the first Monday in January, which is the first day of the new official year of the state. And as provided by law, the legislature convenes on dates provided by law. And in 2023, the state government finance bill shifted the date of the convening of the legislature to the first Tuesday after the second Monday in January, as opposed to the first Tuesday after the first Monday in January. So now there's an 8-day gap in legislative authority for operations that continue for the House. And so that's the sort of issue that is being addressed by this resolution and will continue to be an issue going forward every 2 years with this current convening schedule. So with that in mind, this policy provides for the administrative operation of the House during that 8-day period in the absence of a leadership team or a speaker being appointed by the House itself. And what it does is appoint the last elected chief clerk of the House to be the acting chief clerk for those days. So in this resolution, the acting chief clerk would act between January 6th, 2025 and ending at the time that the new session of the legislature has convened, elected officers, and become duly organized, which we expect would be January 14th. And during that period of time, the acting chief clerk has the following powers under the resolution. Starting on line 10, the acting chief clerk is authorized to appoint other last elected House officers who are not members of the House to serve as acting House officers and to perform those duties. So the examples here that I point to would include the Sergeant at Arms, who would be directed to provide security for House spaces in the Capitol and Centennial Office Building. And in the absence of this resolution, there arguably is not authority for the Sergeant to act in that way to secure House spaces. I would note that this is referring to last elected officers who are not members, which is a sort of term of art that comes from statute. So these are the sort of staff officers as opposed to those officers that require that the Constitution or state law requires to be a member of the House. So this wouldn't allow for the appointment of an acting speaker. So these are just the administrative officers of the House. Second, in this resolution, starting in line 13, the acting chief clerk is authorized to continue the appointment of current House employees that were employed as of January 5th, 2025, so the last day of the current term, and then also to appoint additional employees subject to the mutual agreement of the designated leaders of the two largest incoming caucuses. And then the acting chief clerk related to personnel would also be authorized to grant administrative approval for the processing of employee terminations and leaves, which is usually a process that would be handled by the leadership team of the House. Starting in line 17, item 3 there allows the acting chief clerk to direct the payment of contractual or other obligations of the House, including payroll and expense reimbursement. And then item 4 there authorizes other actions necessary to maintain the orderly administrative operations of the House during this 8-day period. And then lastly, starting in line 21, to be clear that this policy is not authorizing the acting clerk to do anything other than sort of maintain the status quo of House operations. So it's directing that the acting clerk can only expend funds consistent with the amounts that have been allocated by this committee during this session. And Mr. Chair, that's the end of the resolution.
Thank you for the description. So to add additional detail, the reason that the statutory change had been made was that in 2023, the first Tuesday after the first Monday was January 3rd, and that was not ideal for a number of members who were coming back from holidays or coming back from the break to have to start 2 days after the first of the year. So that change was made in 2023. And I do appreciate, Mr. Gehring, that this is narrowly tailored to administrative functions and continuing payroll. So with that, I will move the adoption of 2024 R28A2, the resolution on House
Mr. Chair.
operations. I will go to questions. I'm just getting to the motion so we can have discussion on it. On House operations in the absence of a duly organized legislature, a discussion to the motion, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Gehring. I just wondered if I'm going to vote for it, but if we didn't do that, how would it affect the construction of the state office building? If this lapsed, would the state office building requirements or funding or actual work on the building also lapse?
Mr. Chair, Representative Robbins, so I'm not sure that the construction project itself would lapse because most of the construction is being managed by the Department of Administration at this point. But what would change is if there are any obligations that the House would be obligated to make decisions on during that 8-day period, that under this resolution, the acting clerk would be authorized to make those decisions. But I'm not aware of anything that it's a pretty narrow window of time. And my understanding is that the kind of House role in making decisions about the construction of the building have either already happened or will come later in the process. So I wouldn't expect that in the absence of this resolution that anything substantive would change about the building itself.
It's my understanding as well. I believe that the Department of Administration is now responsible for the project. Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Gehring. So when was the decision made to that just happening by sort of practice? What's the authority by which the power for the state office building construction has been transferred from the Rules Committee to the Department of Administration?
You have a citation. I'll allow you to respond.
Mr. Chair, Representative Robbins, yes. So the current statutes that govern kind of construction projects on the Capitol complex, provide that the Department of Administration is the manager of those types of projects. So there's not a particular thing that will cite to you that cites a transfer of authority to the Department of Administration. That's just the general practice for how projects work on the Capitol.
Further discussion to the motion? All right, seeing none, I will renew my motion to adopt the 2024 R28A2. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails. Our final order of business is the 2024 Verning motion on payment of legal fees. I will move this motion, and then I will describe it, and then we will take discussion. So I will move that legal counsel for Representative Bianca Verning for services related to her employment as a Minnesota representative be paid by the House of Representatives in the amount of $10,000, $391.40. So the background for this motion is that Representative Verning was elected in a special election last year or last term. And when she returned to her employment, her employer dramatically cut back her hours and her pay based on the new job that she held as a part-time state legislator. So this prompted a legal dispute over her rights to maintain her employment in that particular job. She was represented by counsel in that legal dispute. They successfully negotiated a separation of employment. And since this was related to her work as a Minnesota representative, we are proposing that we pay for those legal costs as other employers would in other legal disputes. I will open it up for any questions or discussion. Leader Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of questions on this situation. We know that Minnesota statute section 3.088 protects us that are serving in the legislature. Can you tell me what the arrangements of the settlement might have been, how that was structured, or could we be provided with either a copy, or are the attorneys available to answer questions?
The attorneys are not available. I can describe the settlement in general terms. I don't have the full settlement available to me, but essentially it was a lump sum payment for a separation of employment. And so there was a negotiated separation between the employer and Representative Verning. Leader Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fact that the request right now with what's come forward would put Minnesota taxpayers on the hook for $10,391.40. I think it would be important that we would have at least to be able to see the copy of the settlement and maybe ask the attorneys questions as we move forward. I guess more of a statement in that point, but another question that I have is, can you tell me if there's been any precedent that would have led us to pay for a violation of an employer against a legislator? Has there been any past precedent set in the legislature that we paid something like this?
Question, Representative Demuth. I'm not aware of previous payment along these lines. I'm also not aware of a situation like this that's come up before, where the employer, in this case, sought to reduce, essentially eliminate the position after the employee came back to work. So this is precedent setting. I think it's a good precedent, because I do think that for members of either party, if they are faced with a similar circumstance in the future, we would want them to be represented and want there to be the opportunity for them to have their rights advocated for. But I will see if Peter Squirra has any additional. Peter Squirra, our controller and chief financial officer, if you have any additional context to add.
Mr. Chair, Representative Demuth, I have no additional information to add. There has not been a precedence for the employment, this legal fee policy used on an employment issue.
Leader Damon, further questions?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Scora, for that information. Mr. Chair, can you tell us how much the settlement was?
I have that dollar amount in front of me. I just have the dollar amount for what the legal fees are, which is what I believe is pertinent to this discussion. Leader Damon.
I believe I'm going to have, I see that there's other hands raised right now. I will go ahead and I have more questions, but I will just kind of put it to rest right now. There's other hands being raised. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions for you or for whomever you want to designate the questions to. In the settlement document, and I'm sure you've read it, but was the House of Representatives named as an entity that suffered damage in any way?
Settlement was between Representative Vernick and her employer, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the House of Representatives was not actually suffering a damage or harm, and it's really immaterial as to where Representative Vernick was employed in this legislative job. And I think that what her employer did was absolutely wrong. But what I think is equally wrong is that we are now asking the taxpayer of Minnesota to pick up the legal fees for what you yourself just told us was an operation where we were not a party to any of the proceedings. The fact that Representative Vernick is a state representative is immaterial to this, and therefore I don't see why we should be paying for her legal fees. And as we've just heard, it's never been done before. And I just find this to be troubling. And I think, well, what would the reasonable person say? The reasonable person would say that if Representative Vernick received a settlement, that her legal fees should be covered by that settlement. And there are lawyers all over the place in the state of Minnesota. You can see billboards for them on the highway. But I think that what we need to focus on here is why is it, and this will be a question for you, Mr. Chair, why is it that the state of Minnesota, the taxpayer, is being asked to pay for something that you yourself, Mr. Chair, said it was not a party to any of the proceedings?
Well, Representative Vernick is an employee of the state of Minnesota as a Minnesota state representative, and this dispute related to her employment as a Minnesota House representative, because that was the reason that the employer gave for the dramatic reduction in her pay and hours upon returning to employment. So the representation was in regard to her role as a public employee, and that was the cause of action for why the employer reduced her hours. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And respectfully, you yourself just said that this was not something that the House of Representatives and by extension, the state of Minnesota was actually a party to. So the fact that she was reduced her hours or ultimately had her job eliminated, that's in my estimation, and I think the average person's estimation, completely immaterial to what we're actually talking about. So before we get down the road, I'm going to ask for a roll call on this, Mr. Chair, because I can't for the life of me understand why a taxpayer in Minneapolis or St. Paul or Waconia or pick a place should have to pay for the legal proceedings and the fees that are associated with them for something that is, as you yourself, Mr. Chair, said, was a private employee deliberation, and we are effectively not even a third party. We're not material to what's going on. So I'm very troubled by this, and I would ask, Mr. Chair, if you or House Research can provide a statutory defense for why we're doing this.
So you did request a roll call. Roll call has been granted, and the statute in question is Minnesota Statute Section 3.088, which defends the rights of employees of the House when they are terminated by an employer. Representative Nash.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And in that statute, is there any reference to the House being the entity that's on the hook for legal fees?
Not to my awareness, no.
Thank you for clarifying that and establishing my my thought process. I may have other questions, but I'm sure there are others that wish to take a turn at this.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to align myself with the comments that this is a private dispute, and I have no idea why taxpayers should be on the hook with it, but especially when we don't even know what the settlement is. So I think, I mean, did she get a settlement of $10,000, $100,000, $1 million? I don't know why, when we don't understand the scope of the settlement, we are still asking the taxpayers to pay for her legal fees. And clearly she got some sort of settlement, so I don't know why the legal fees wouldn't be taken out of that, or that could have been part of the settlement that her employer or former employer would have paid the legal fees if she indeed won. So I think that's all about the private negotiations between her as a citizen and her private employer. And the state has no role in this. And I just have to say, I mean, we have already, as this body, wasted $730 million on the state office building. And this is a smaller amount of money, but there's clearly no reason for taxpayers to be on the hook for someone's private legal fees. And especially when we don't know the bulk of the settlement, to me, we at a minimum don't have enough information to make this decision today, but I think it's on very thin ice that taxpayers should be asked to pay for this. Thank you.
Leader Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you tell us, was there an actual law that had been filed, or was there just these attorney's fees were available?
There was not a lawsuit filed. This was a negotiated legal settlement. Leader
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, the fact that we haven't been able to see the settlement, the House actually, this is an employer issue. They should be on the hook for doing the wrong thing against Minnesota statute. We want to make sure that those of us in the legislature have the opportunity to serve and that our employers will follow questions to make sure that we are understanding before we would set a precedent such as this and put the Minnesota taxpayers on the hook for over $10,000 for an employment issue. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion to lay this on the table, and I request a roll call.
Makes a motion to lay this on the table and requests a roll call. That is a non-debatable motion. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Long. Chair Long, no. Vice Chair Hollins.
No.
Hollins, no. Leader Damath.
Aye.
Damath, aye. Representative Engen.
Aye.
Engen, aye. Representative Howard.
No.
Howard, no. Representative Hewitt.
No.
Hewitt, no. Representative Jordan.
No.
Jordan, no. Representative Lilly.
No.
Lilly, no. Representative Moeller.
No.
Moeller, no. Representative Nash.
Aye.
Nash, aye. Representative Pulowski.
Pulowski, no.
Pulowski, no. Representative Rarick. Representative Robbins.
Aye.
Robbins, aye. Representative Torkelson.
Aye.
Torkelson, aye. Representative Wolgamott.
Wolgamott votes no.
Wolgamott, no. Mr. Chair, there are 5 ayes and 9 nays.
5 ayes and 9 nays. The motion does not prevail. Further discussion to the original motion. Leader Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am quite disappointed that this committee would not pause in the process of what we are doing before we spend additional taxpayer dollars. I understand decisions can be made differently in a lame duck session. This is very disappointing. I want Representative Vernig to be taken care of as a legislator. This is not about her. This is about the fact that we are trying to put on the backs of taxpayers in the state of Minnesota a more than $10,000 bill for attorney's fees for a settlement that no one on this committee has seen. We have no idea the content of it. And that we would think this is the right direction to take. Employers need to follow the law, and Minnesota taxpayers should not be on the hook for when that does not happen. I am really disappointed that we could not table this. I would say I will not speak again. I know eventually you're going to go to vote on this. There has been a roll call, but I would ask everyone on this call or on this meeting to pause before you would actually vote yes on this and consider what is being done in this meeting right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment before I'm sure you want to go to a vote. But so my thought is, if somebody decided that as a state representative, they wanted to do me some harm, which is sort of what happened to Representative Verning. She was let go from a job, and that's we all agree that was a really poor decision by her former employer. But let's say somebody decided to do something to my home or to a vehicle of mine, and I need to take them to court to find settlement. And by the very virtue of the fact that they did this because I am a state representative, is it your comment, Mr. Chair, and for anybody else, that the House should pay for my legal fees because the damage that I am suffering was because of my status as a state representative?
No, Representative Nash, that's not a precedent we would be establishing today. I think the precedent today is pretty clear, which is when we have a representative, employee of the House that has had an employer violate their rights under Minnesota statutes, particularly statute section 3.088. I'll note that the employer here was a public school district. That is a right that we are establishing, that it is appropriate for us to help out that individual in that dispute, as any employer would when they have an employee who is under the terms of their employment having their rights violated. Further, this is a statutory dispute, where, as the example you cite, I don't believe there's any particular statute protecting their rights as a House employee in those circumstances. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the fact that you yourself just now said that you are establishing this right. Heretofore, it has not existed. You yourself just now said that you are going through the process of establishing it. So you are now setting precedents. I think this is amazingly dangerous. I really hope that we'll see this later on the news, because I think what you've chosen to do, or presuming you're choosing to do, since we haven't had a vote yet, is you are inserting the Minnesota taxpayer as the funding source for, as you yourself admitted, Mr. Chair, a private labor dispute between an employee and their former employer. And do I remember who the employer was? Could you share that with?
Yeah, employer was Brightworks.
Okay.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just didn't have my papers in front of me. Wanted to make sure that we established that. I find this very troubling. I think that the decisions that you're about to make through your vote, members, is that the state of Minnesota is now going to be on the hook for private labor disputes, whereas Chair Long said the House of Representatives is a third party at best. And we are now going to take taxpayer dollars and pay for these legal fees, when the Representative Verning, did receive a settlement. So once again, the taxpayers are on the hook for the actions of bad actors. Why is that? It makes no sense. So I would encourage members to vote no. I'm voting no. If I could, I'd vote no 2 or 3 times, because this is just ludicrous. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Torkelson, and then Leader Dameth, then we'll go to a vote. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'm not familiar with Brightworks. You mentioned a public school. I don't know. Is there a town named Brightworks?
Brightworks is technically a public school district. So it's works as a nonprofit educational cooperative, and Representative Verning's title was the Director of Health and Safety Programs there. Representative Torkelson.
And where do they operate, Mr. Chair?
In the state of Minnesota.
Just all over the state? Is that?
believe so. I don't know their every single school district in which they operate. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm no lawyer, but I would think that in a settlement like this, generally the fees for the lawyer would be paid as part of the settlement, not thrown back on the person involved here, the Representative Vernig. I'm very concerned about the precedent we are setting here today without full knowledge of exactly what happened in this case. It wasn't a case, it was just action between the lawyers, but setting this precedent, it seems dangerous to me. I would hope that members would think we should do this in the bright daylight of regular session and with full information. I'll be voting no, Mr. Chair.
Leader Dame with the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging me on just one more question. The fact that the $10,391.40 is being paid to the attorneys on behalf of Representative Vernig, what are the tax implications as a beneficiary of what is being paid on her behalf? Can you tell me that?
Might see if I can phone a friend. I don't know, Pete Square, if you know that offhand.
Chair Long, Leader Damath, I don't know the ramifications of the tax. It may be a taxable benefit. I would have to check with our CPA, Miss Arend, and the tax ramifications of the payment.
Leader Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Squira. Again, another unanswered, not because we didn't have the information, but we are rushing through payment of this where we don't have the full knowledge of both the settlement, any potential tax implications, where this might be. And then on top of that, setting a new precedent that is very, very problematic. I heard that this is a school district. I've never heard of a school district named Brightworks that operates all over the state. That is incredibly concerning to me. Who are they? I don't have time to Google. I would hope that they will be subject to a data request, because if we can't get the information here, and our team will be voting no, but if this passes, the taxpayers of Minnesota deserve to see the full data of all of this. I am going to encourage a no vote on this. I would hope everyone on this committee would join me until we can get further information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Leader Damath. So Brightworks is an educational service cooperative, and they do work in the metro area primarily. I did get some additional information to share based on your question, Representative Torkelson, as well. So I will note, it sounds from the discussion that we've had today that there is agreement that Representative Vernig was wronged. There is agreement that it was done as a result of her employment as a Minnesota representative. And there is agreement that this could have been a statutory violation as well under Minnesota statute section 3.088. So I think the precedent we're establishing today is a good one, which is that when a House employee has their rights violated based on their employment as a Minnesota House of Representative, that we as the House can stand up for their rights under our statutes. So with that, the roll call being requested, the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Long?
Yes.
Long, aye. Vice Chair Hollins?
Aye.
Hollins, aye. Leader Damath?
No.
Leader Damath, no. Representative Engen?
No.
Engen, no. Representative Howard?
Aye.
Howard, aye. Representative Hewitt?
Aye.
Hewitt, aye. Representative Jordan?
Aye.
Jordan, aye. Representative Lilly?
Lily, aye.
Lilly, aye. Representative Moeller?
Aye.
Moeller, aye. Representative Nash?
No.
Nash, no. Representative Pulowski?
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Representative Rarick? Representative Robbins?
No.
Robbins, no. Representative Torkelson?
No.
Torkelson, no. Representative Wolgamott?
Wolgamott votes aye.
Mr. Chair, with 9 ayes and 5 nays.
The motion prevails with 9 ayes and 5 nays. Members, that is our business before the committee. Hope everyone has a happy holiday, and we are adjourned.